And welcome everyone to our webinar today. I'm Elizabeth Mon. If I haven't met you, I'm the Director of Fine Arts at the Oklahoma State Department of Education. And I put together these webinars for this week because I was just thinking through all the possibilities for the fall and what might happen. Of course, none of us knows for sure, but maybe by looking back on things that we did during the spring, we can get some answers or some new ideas for things in the fall. So today our presenter is Eric Lyons, and he was the high school visual art educator at Deer Creek High School this past spring, and I'll let him share with you other things here in a moment. As we're going through the presentation, keep yourself on mute, but take note of any questions you have or just throw them into the chat, and we'll have time at the end for lots of questions and back and forth or whatever you need. So keep those in mind. And Eric, whenever you're ready, go for it.
All right, I'm in here with a lot of rock stars, so I don't know how much I'm going to be able to offer you, but Eric Lyons was teaching at Deer Creek High School, just recently moved to Heritage Hall High School. So it's been kind of a weird time in my life because, you know, we haven't been at school since March, and now I don't have my position at Deer Creek, but I also don't really have a connection to Heritage Hall yet. So it's been tough for me as an educator just because it's something that I do all the time. And for the last 3 months, it felt like I really haven't had anything. So it's good to be here with other educators again. That's exciting to me. Elizabeth just asked that I could share some different things that I did for distance learning at Deer Creek that was effective, and which I know I'm not here to reinvent the wheel for anyone. Everybody's going to look different. And then even when we start in August, it's no longer going to be, well, what are we going to do? It's what are we doing? I mean, you know, this last 2 months, we're just all flying by the seat of our pants. And now when it comes August, we really have to have a plan, and we have to be ready, and we don't get to have the excuses of, well, that didn't work anymore. So so with what I did, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys so you can make a little presentation for you guys so you can see. It's in Google Slides. Just to let you know real quick with Google Slides. So Deer Creek, we did use Google Classroom, and I know that's going to look different for everyone come the fall. I know some schools have switched platforms, and that can look different from elementary to high school. I know, like Deer Creek, for instance, even though I'm not there anymore, I know they're switching to Canvas. So that's a whole new learning platform that they have to learn. Some people will stay with Google Classroom, and then I also know that I'm sure there's other platforms out there that everyone's trying to reinvent the wheel so that we can be able to be equipped when it's time to use it again. Hopefully we can get back to normal and we won't have to use it near as much. What I like about using Google Slides and what I did with my students, so, you know, even though we worked through Google Classroom, I always made them a Google Slide, because on Google Classroom, there's not a status. It doesn't say so-and-so looked at this, so you don't know if a student has opened up the work. And, you know, that's the train we have to keep following, and we have to find those people and email them and follow up with them. Did you get the assignment? Did you do this? So I started making it Google Slides, because on Google Slides, you actually can look and see who has opened up the document. So that's super effective. So if that's a way you want to make sure kids are actually checking the assignments and knowing that they know it's out there, yes, you're probably still going to need to communicate with them, but that was a peace of mind for me to be able to click on it and be like, okay, so-and-so has looked at this. I now know how to communicate with them about the assignment. And then I also know which students I need to reach out to and see how that works. If any of you at the high school level had the nightmares that I think we all had, I think after like 2 weeks of teaching, word got out that grades didn't count anymore. And then all of our participation dropped off pretty drastically. Not to say that students still didn't work. And actually, I still have students turning in assignments. I got one today. Like, grades are finalized, whatever, but people are still looking back and working on these things. So this is what we did at Deer Creek. Cynthia, you can vouch to this a little bit because we all had these at our schools. So anyway, so the district sent this out, and this was something that was provided on the website, so parents could check as well. You know, as you know, Google Classroom accounts are connected to schools. So this wasn't something that I couldn't share my Google Classroom with someone outside of my school district. It goes specifically to your school district. But this was a way that parents could check it in case the parents didn't have a school email or wasn't able to log into their kids and see what it was. If you look on the left side of it, it has the coursework. So we all had a learning goal, which was, for instance, the ones I'm going to show you guys was documentary photography. And then we gave them an essential activity. The essential activity was that the bread and butter. That's the assignment we really wanted them to do. But we all had students who most, I think, had access to some sort of technology, but we do have kids that don't. I know Deer Creek might look a little different than some other schools. So we have the essential activity, and then afterwards we'd have an alternative activity. So for my alternative activity, I just had them write research papers. I know that doesn't sound super fun to visual artists. We really like to see people creating things, but I did have several students actually do the papers. Which I think was really kind of cool because they were reading, they were understanding, and just learning about the artist on a different level of just me showing them what to do and what my expectations were. So with each assignment I did with documentary photography, I picked a specific artist for them to look at. That helped me control a little bit of, I didn't want things too far-fetched. And then there's also, a kid turns in an assignment based off something he found on Pinterest and gives you a link, and then you got all his nudity and all this other stuff. So I just tried to avoid those things. So I found artists that would fit the mold. That way I didn't have to worry about any of the ethics side of it a little bit later. So at this one, Dorothea Lange, which if you haven't been to the Cowboy Hall of Fame or Western Museum, what's the name of it now? It's got a new name. There's actually an exhibit through the 1st of July. So if you have a chance to go see that, you can also see Andy Warhol. So it's pretty cool. Anyway, so just gave someone that was good. And then additional practice was, it wasn't necessarily connected to what we were doing, but little practices that I could see them be able to achieve without having to leave their home, without having to go outside. Everyone was still social distancing. So all these people were quarantined. So I really had to think of assignments, and I know you guys did as well, assignments that could be done at home and the students could have access to those things. So, like my sculpture class looked completely different than my photography class, but I had to think in my mind, like, okay, I have to give you an assignment that I know you can attain. So like Amazon sculptures using Amazon boxes. Not every kid gets Amazon boxes, but usually someone has cardboard at their house. You could use a cereal box if you need to, but Amazon box, and that an Amazon box, just by saying that, directly connected with the kids immediately. They knew what I was talking about. And then it kind of spikes their interest. Like, oh, I get these boxes at my house on my porch every day because my mom's been shopping at Target and Amazon forever. And I've got all these packages. So now I have something that I can use. But that additional practice was just something that I knew that they could still practice, but not necessarily something they had to turn into me. And a lot of kids would do all 3 assignments. Like I had kids they would do their essential activity. They would be interested and they would write a little bit about the artists that I had listed. And then the additional practice, they would add those things on there as well. We had reminders that had Google Classroom code connected to it. Graded assignments would be posted and turned in through Google Classroom, so the kids knew where to look for their grades. That it would be on Google Classroom, but also in the grade book, so they could see those in 2 different ways. I also let them know that you could check out the ebooks from the Deer Creek High School library. So we use the same system, kind of like like you can check out books online, just like if you went to the Metropolitan Library System here in Oklahoma City. So the kids could go on there and put in their school ID and still be able to check out books. And that way they're not just relying on Google for their resources, which I know is super easy to do, but some kids really like to go in a little bit deeper and see what else is there to have offered. And then also, I allowed any spring work missing from the spring semester to be turned in for partial credit. So after, I think, April 8th or April 12th was our cutoff at Deer Creek, that kids could get full credit for anything they had done. But after that, I still allowed them to turn those things in for partial credit. That could go in a lot of different ways, and I think you should be able to communicate that with your kids. Elizabeth and I talked about this the other day, where you might have internet access at home, but you also have to be mindful that there might be 4 or 5 kids at home. So getting assignments turned in on time, I was a lot more flexible with the way assignments were turned in. No one was penalized. Obviously, you couldn't be penalizing any grades, but I had to be very mindful, because I know a lot of my students have multiple siblings trying to do everything at once, and you all know how that works. If you're trying to use the internet and your cell phone at the same time, you usually start getting some complications. Like I said, the online resources, we had a Google Classroom set up, and then I always put links on the right side too, that not only I was including that for my students in Google Classroom, but I wanted to put it on here as well so parents could see it. I had a lot of communication with parents that would be like, okay, my kids got the assignment, but what do they need to do? And I quickly learned that, as many of you saw, like, oh my goodness, like all these parents were like, I love teachers now. You do such a great job. Teaching is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. So I started including them in those links so that they could see what I was expecting the students to do, to help them with motivation for their students, motivations just to help them with that. I even started a Google Classroom that the parents could sign up for. So I had like 86 parents sign up and participate in a Google Classroom that I just did on my own private Gmail account. And it was nothing different than what I was teaching the students. I just copied and pasted and put it as an assignment for other people to do. And that was actually really refreshing for me, because when students after week 2 or week 3 stopped showing up, the parents kept showing up. So I still got that outlet, and I got to teach to them. So here's a little screenshot of what my assignment would look like when I put it in Google Classroom. I would just let them know different artists about documentary photography that they could look up to get an idea of. I also, I'm not going to say I'm going to read this all to you. You guys all know how to do lesson plans and type that all out. But I did talk to them about, so I was doing documentary photography through my sons. I was taking their picture every single day for just to document social distancing, for us to maybe someday look back on like, oh wow, that was such an important part of our life that was so weird and so different. So I was very transparent with the kids, and I always am. I allow them to follow like my Instagram account, so reminded them where it was so they could look at that and get examples instead of me copying and pasting all of my photos into this. Like that gave them an opportunity to follow and look and comment and ask questions, and just another platform that they look at all of the time. So it's easy for them to see and get reminders. And I could see the influence of the pictures that I was taking. I could see that they were going and also kind of capturing that same feel, like really following my lead. And I just thought that was a really good example of being a lead for them. I also found a website that had, I don't know, I just randomly found this website. You guys should write that down. It actually was really some phenomenal different things, which I think Elizabeth is going to share this with everyone, so you'll have it later. But there were some really cool things people were doing as documentary photographers, and this was just a fraction of what they had to offer. But all those authors were able to tell a story through their photography. In my photography class, I really try to make all of my assignments very meaningful to the students. I want them to be able to tell stories through their visual capabilities. It's very simple for someone to just take a picture of whatever and then post it. But I wanted them to be very mindful of being able to tell a story through their photographs, but also through the series of photographs. So they were going to turn in 5 to 7 photos for this assignment to really share with me how the story was being told. And if you look through their assignments from start to finish, you can tell their story, whether that was one day that they spent documenting. It could be a full week that they documented, but you could tell from start to finish a sequence of how it worked out. I always have a rubric as well, and on Google Classrooms, you can set up rubrics for kids to be able to view. It is a little bit extra work on your side as the teacher of doing that, and then going and checking and seeing if they went through and put in the rubric and filled out the rubric, different stuff like that. I think rubrics are super important, and I think that now that if it comes August that we're doing this online learning again, that I think that a rubric could be really good for students in their minds of how they progress with their work. As we are teaching our students, we're normally walking around the room and we're being able to observe how they're working, what they're working on, what their progress is. That's going to look really different now. And I think that I feel that students really thrive from having that little bit of organization instead of us just telling them, here's your assignment on Monday, this is what you're going to turn in on Friday. I think that could be very challenging for them. And if you're an artist like me, you'd probably wait until Friday to do that assignment, and then you just get bogged down and stressed out. I think my rubric here looks different, but I think that if I were to set one up for come August, if we're teaching from home, that I would set up a rubric that has checkpoints. On Monday, I want you to learn about the assignment, and that could be setting up your Google slide, and you could check and make sure that they logged in and they looked at it. So then I can give them the proper points for that day. On Tuesday, they might need to turn in thumbnail drawings. So they're starting to plan, they're starting to develop that idea. On Wednesday, they might start having progress. And you guys all know art assignments, sometimes a week isn't long enough. So it's going to be completely up to you how you gauge that assignment, whether it takes 1 week or 2 weeks. I feel like 2 weeks is always a good number to hit. Usually when you get into 3 weeks, that's when it gets a little choppy, and some people are done and some people are not finished. And some people, it just kind of starts getting a little wishy-washy in your classroom. But setting up those, I think checkpoints would be a very effective way for us to reach our students and really help them to stay on task. And then, so another thing with Google Classroom, and this might be the same for Canvas. I feel like it's the same for Canvas because I just finished my master's at SWASU, and going through there, a lot of our assignments, even though I could attach individual photos, they asked that, can you put this in a Word document and send it to us so that you can see it. So on Google Classroom, I'm sure you guys have gone through this already. So when a student's turning in 5 to 10 photographs and they put it as attachments, you have to select each attachment every single time. And that really, as a teacher, that really slows you down. That your grading process gets a lot slower by doing that. If it's just an assignment where I want you to turn in, just maybe turn in like a progress, and that's one picture, that's easier to do. So I found that, and I found this out before even social distancing, because it was just made it way more difficult for me to go through all the pictures when my kids would turn them in. So what you can do is actually make them make a Google Doc, which is just like a Word document on Microsoft, whatever it is, and then attach all the photos in the document. So then I could just, I don't have it on here, but so here you can see it's as a Google Doc. So I could just scroll through that as one document and see all the photos instantly. I didn't have to click on each link onto the side and wait for it to load. And sometimes the kids would always mess something up and their pictures would be empty. And then I'd have to chase that down and say, okay, this is empty. Can you do that again? I think this is a good tool for you, like, especially if you're having them turn in multiple things at one time, is to ask them to do it in a document, whether that's a Word document or a Google Doc, whatever it is, where they can put all the images in one location. And I just think that'll help you in the long run. Here's the example of if they did it as a link. You can see on the right side that the little red mountains. So I'd have to click on each individual one and talk about it. And then of course you can add comments down there. So I always try to comment on the kids' photos too. I don't want it to be just, I don't want the assignments to feel like dead weight to them. Like I try to really compliment and critique each photograph and say something to them so that they know that I'm looking at it. Like it's not just an empty assignment that I'm sending because my principal told me to turn it in. And I think that's also important to state too, because it's just like if you were a teacher and you went to school on Friday and you didn't have a plan because you finished on Thursday and you just tried to wing it. Like, I don't know if you figured it out yet, but kids know when you're just winging it. And you teachers, as teachers, you know which teachers are just winging it. So when kids know that we're just winging it, I don't feel like they buy into our classroom as much as we want them to. So it does take extra work, but being prepared and making assignments that are relevant and attainable to the students will make your teaching process so much better. And I still had really great turnout from my students, even after hearing that their grades didn't count anymore or whatever. But Frances she had such great turnout from her students. And Frances was great about sharing that with us on social media. But her kids did phenomenal stuff. And they didn't do phenomenal stuff because they were bored. They did phenomenal stuff because Frances was invested in still teaching her students, even though she wasn't with them. And I think that's super, super important. I think it would be very easy for us as sometimes as visual artists, and I know sometimes in our classrooms, like maybe our principals don't get us quite as much, and we feel like we kind of have a free reign to do things the way we want to do. But really making those assignments relevant, and the assignments I did, and I'm about to show you some examples of the documentary photography, and then I have another assignment. But just making those assignments relevant to the students, like I think that really meant a whole lot. So I'm just going to show you some examples of them using their documentary photography, so we know what it's like to social distance. And I thought this picture was super powerful of her visiting her grandma and grandpa and being separated by the glass. Like, this might not be the best photograph in the entire world, but my point for this assignment was for them to tell a story. And without me even saying anything, everyone knew the narrative of what was happening in this photograph. She did super phenomenal job with it. Letting kids talk about who they are. So going to take communion because they can't go to mass, which is a super important part of Catholicism. That was still very important to them, and to be able to watch them still carry that out. And I like the priest back there in the background who's kind of photobombing, but looks like he's still praising everyone. I thought that was really cool. And it's really cool that they were able to take it in a way, almost in a way of like, I just went blank on the artist's name. I'll come back to it later. Anyways, but being able to capture the priest without even really saying smile for the camera or can I take your picture, it made the picture a lot more dynamic. take a picture of dad in his mask. The lighting is not the best thing in the world, but you can see the student really reached out to create a setting with her dad of, can I take your picture? And, her becoming the director of the photograph instead of just taking a photograph because I'm doing this for an assignment. I thought this one of mom working at the table. I also find this one kind of be pretty interesting because I had this student as photography and I have her sister in painting. So I got to see both of their different worlds happening at the same time. And mom's working at the table here, but if you look to the right of the table is all of the paint from the painting students. So it's like this shared working space that they've all had to work around and be able to, really use during this social distancing time. Mom just doing laundry, simple things that every day you probably wouldn't have taken a picture of, but mom's home, kids are home, everybody's home with one another now. So life looked a whole lot different. Bonfires in the backyard. I love this photo with the fire. The use of positive and negative space. So I think when we think documentary photography, we automatically think about taking pictures of people. And this student in particular went the opposite direction and really only showed things that were happening in her life without the people, which was also a good juxtaposition of what was happening in our lives because we were doing things in our lives now without people. It's not, I'm sure we've probably all seen fire photos before, but her approach was able to tell a story totally different. And then a second assignment that we did, which I didn't share with the slides earlier, but we did a Cubism assignment. So we talked about Pablo Picasso and how he developed his photographs and worked his Cubism into actual photography. And then I also had to think, okay, all of my students don't have Photoshop. They don't have access to computer programs. So what's simple ways? So I just started finding every single app possible that I could find where they can make pic collages, they could screenshot, they could do all kinds of different things, different layouts. And then we're able to create images based off of layering multiple photos that they had taken. So I told them for every assignment, for every picture that you turn into me, you should probably take like 20 photos of it. So 20 photos of the same person to get where you're trying to get to. So this student did a self-portrait of themselves. And I think that was a super effective way of just using their cell phone. They didn't have to have complex computer programs. This one is super simple. I mean, this is just a normal thing that's on your iPhone. It's not even an app. Like you can just create collages on there this way. Working with color. I'm really big about teaching them photography through doing black and white, but my students like to slip in those color photos in there just to show that, hey, look what else we can do. But I always have to be mindful of that as well. And then little crazy things like this, multiple pictures of the country road with their dog. And then not just piecing together a dog again, but changing the positions of the photographs. I love the back legs on the front of the dog. I think that, hey, sorry, my son is coming in. Okay, so as far as my slides and everything there, that's what I've got for you on that thing. I know everything's also gonna look different. We're here as secondary, so that's middle school and high school, so that could look, our classrooms could be completely different. And the way we approach things. I also really started thinking about, Elizabeth and I talked about it a little bit, and whereas we are all reinventing the wheel right now, but being a collective, I think would be super beneficial to all of us. You can always access me through email, if you want my text, whatever, if you want to communicate that way. But finding ways that we can share assignments, I think would also be super great. I know sometimes as teachers, we might get a little protective of the things that we teach, especially when you think like, okay, I'm going to go to contests if I'm doing this really cool thing, but I teach Frances how to do it. She's going to do that really cool thing. And then now at art competition, we're all going to have all these really cool things. But I am 100% an educator and I love sharing with others. So any assignment that anybody ever sees that I'm sharing, that my students are doing, that's always available to anyone. Like that's what I have as a mindset. So being able to share with one another has to be super important. I think of Elizabeth telling me about Moore Public Schools, so they're doing things a little bit differently than everyone else, where students might have the option of coming to school, they might have the option of doing online school, and I think there's maybe an option of like a blended learning as well. So that's 3 different types of teaching that their teachers have to do in one day. So they have to be able to teach their students who are in the classroom, they have to teach their students who are not in the classroom, and then they have to teach their students who might show up 3 days out of the week. So that's just a huge, heavy load, and I can't imagine doing that by themselves, like doing it all alone. So being able to share that with someone, like even though we might all be at different districts, whether that be Deer Creek and Piedmont or McAllister or Heritage Hall, which is a private school, or Bethany, being able to connect to one another, even though we might be sharing the same assignments, and being in this boat together, I think is way more important than going out and trying to swim all by yourself. It's going to look different. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be hectic. We might be a small group right here, but we're all connected in many different ways. And we're connected in different parts of the state. I think if we could all really join together and really help each other through this moment, teaching can still be a whole lot of fun. It's obviously weird and different because we aren't in our classrooms like we like to be, but being weird and different is something that we're all going to have to do together. So being able to, that support group, I mean, obviously you showed up today because you're curious about different ways of learning, and hopefully Elizabeth is a good connection for allowing us all to still do that. I know there's Oklahoma Art Educators Association is a good way to connect with people. There's 1,000 different Facebook groups out there that you can be a part of. And I think those are super important. Man, I've learned so many things from people teaching all over the world right now, because people have been willing to share those things. They've shared their successes, they've shared their failures, and Lord knows we've all had the failures, but being able to do it as a whole, as a group, I think that's going to be super beneficial. As far as that, I think that's, Elizabeth, I think that's about all I have as far as what I had to present, but I know we're here for however much longer. I would love to be able to answer some questions. Maybe there was something that I had that you would like me to share with you, or maybe elaborate on a little bit. So I'll turn that over to Elizabeth, who's also in charge.
I just wanted to share with you all in case you had some questions, because I know Deer Creek was hooked up with the technology that their students were one-to-one and they all had internet at home, and that's not the case for a lot of our Oklahoma students. So Superintendent Hoffmeister is working to get the CARES Act funding to expand internet connectivity across the state, both wiring to students' homes, and then also, I can't remember where I read it, but somewhere I read that she is trying to order 50,000 Wi-Fi hotspots, and those hotspots will be distributed to all the districts according to student need. So maybe there will be a hotspot on a bus in a neighborhood, or they might give them out to families, those families with 4 or 5 kiddos who really need a boost so their kids can be on their school devices at home, all those sorts of things. So that's one of her big focuses, is to try to get technology to students. And I think at the high school level, a lot of districts will try very hard to have their students one-to-one and online, and not doing any sort of paper packets or websites, if at all possible. Eric, we have a question in the chat about the assignment you showed. Could you email that to her? Maybe write down the email address. And you're still muted.
Sorry, I muted myself. Yes, that's for Beth over on the side, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I've got that down.
And if anyone else would like to have it, just put your email address in the chat and we'll make sure it gets to you. We do have some time for questions, so if you have one, you can unmute yourself or just type it into the chat and we will answer questions.
I have been wondering, can you guys hear me?
Mhm.
Okay. I've been wondering if is there going to be an opportunity as professional development to become Google certified?
Great question. I think the districts that are going with Google or switching to it or et cetera, they are doing some trainings, because I know I've talked to some teachers who've said that they're sitting through Canvas trainings or Google Classroom trainings this summer. So ask your administrators if they can get you trainings, because I think they're trying to be pretty liberal with it, but I'm sure they're focusing on the new teachers in the district for a lot of places.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cynthia, for Canvas, my experience that I've had with Canvas was through SWASU, and I didn't have to do the trainings for Deer Creek since I was leaving. It has its pros and cons, and I feel like the more you work with it, you're gonna learn. I've talked to other teachers who are learning it right now, and it's a lot of trial and error. It's a little bit intimidating at first, but being able to sit and work with those things, they've really become a lot more comfortable with that. I feel like some teachers shared with me a link for making it a little bit easier from a high school. So I'll try to find that, and I'll send that to you in email as well. Canvas, it just took a little bit of work. And I don't know how per district it's going to be. I know a big hiccup for the college level with using Canvas is they had to publish their entire semester at once. And I'm not sure if that's the same for the high school. But once they published it, they couldn't change it. So they couldn't add assignments. I guess they could not teach the assignment, but they couldn't add new assignments because that went down as their syllabus, and they had to follow the syllabus at the college level. So I'm assuming there's probably going to be flexibility at the public school level for you to be able to change those things. So that was a big hiccup. And then another big hiccup was, I guess, when people turned in assignments on Canvas through a JPEG or anything like that, the files were giant. And like out in Western Oklahoma, internet connections weren't as good. So they really would struggle with downloading images and being able to see the work that you were turning in. And that's why I would always put mine in a Microsoft Word document, because then they could download that a lot easier. So that might just be something that we as a whole as teachers are really just going to have to navigate. If you've got phenomenal Google Wire at your house or whatever, and fiber, and you can get downloads really fast, it's easy. But different internets are different houses and in our price ranges of what we can afford and things like that. So we've all had internet nightmares, I'm sure, and I'm sure internet in Oklahoma City looks way different than internet in McAllister. So it's just the nature of the beast that's there. So I don't have any experience with Canvas per se as using it myself, but I'll try to find that link and share it with you if I have it. And it also looks like in the comments that Laura shared some, oh, she wants the shortcuts. Okay, all right, I've got that.
I hadn't used Canvas until this spring, and at first I was a little bit frustrated with it and setting up a course, but I do feel like once you find your way around it, it's really helpful. It depends on what your district turns on, but it does have the discussion boards that you can have students posting in, talking back and forth, and they can share images and all of that. And there is not a Zoom thing within it, but there is a meeting space within it, and SNU doesn't have that turned on, but if your school turned that on, then you could maybe meet through Canvas as well.
Eric,
Oh, go
I
ahead.
just need you to tell me how to teach high school.
You teach it.
I'm sure I'll be asking lots of questions of you.
Francis, the difference between teaching middle school and high school is that you will have students that are more focused in on visual arts, because by then they know which direction they want to go.
And then you're also going to have to balance the kids that are in there for the credit. But those are a lot of fun too, because if you snag them, they'll stay with you forever.
One more thing I wanted to share with all of you is that the OSDE has been releasing return to school guidance, return to learn, I think is what we called it. And there was a phase 1 that came out last week or the week before, and the arts section was really short and brief. I just didn't want to put anything in there that administrators would come back and say, but you said this. So I didn't put anything in there that would hold us to a certain level. But the next round of guidance that will come out in mid-July, that's being created with the help of the Oklahoma Art Educators Board and a bunch of different professional arts organizations. So I'm getting teacher input on that from visual arts. And we're talking about things like disinfecting tables and paintbrushes and all the different things that you might be dealing with within your classroom. So that will maybe give you some guidance as you go back to your room and try to figure out what you can do. And when you're thinking of all that, the school district should be supplying you gloves, masks, hand sanitizer, disinfectant, wipes. That can all be paid for through the CARES Act. So don't use your $150 art budget to go buy cases of Clorox wipes, because that isn't what you should have to do. Your school district should be getting that for you for the year. So be sure to ask about it, but should be coming. Any other thoughts before we wrap up?
I did also notice that Elizabeth put my email over there in the comments as well. So if you guys want to write that down, feel free to email me anytime. I'll get back to you as quick as I can.
Great. Well, thank you, Eric, for sharing your knowledge and expertise, and good luck as you switch buildings, try to figure out the new game. And everyone, thank you for coming today. I hope it was helpful to you. And we'll try to do some more of these in July, so keep looking.
Yeah, thanks. And if anyone figured out how to build relationships with students via the Zoom meeting, let me know, because if we're starting a brand new school that way, I'm a little bit nervous.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your afternoon.